The great goldfish memory myth. For decades, people have repeated the claim that goldfish can only remember things for 3 seconds. It's said so often that many believe it without question. But in reality, goldfish have been shown to remember patterns, feeding times, and even the faces of their owners for months. Scientists have trained them to navigate mazes and respond to sounds, proving their memory is far from fleeting. This myth likely comes from the idea that small animals must have small minds. The truth is, memory doesn't depend on brain size alone. It depends on how the brain is wired. Goldfish live in a complex environment where remembering where food is or who is safe helps them survive. So next time you see a goldfish swimming calmly in its tank, know that it's not living in a loop of 3-second forgetfulness. It remembers, it learns, and in its own way it knows you're there. The myth continues because it's a funny, simple thing to say. But once you know the truth, it becomes another reminder that the world is more interesting when you look beyond the surface. Sleep comes easier when you realize that even a tiny fish can hold a memory, quietly swimming with the past still in mind. You've probably heard it. Humans only use 10% of their brain. It's often said to inspire untapped potential or make you imagine superhuman powers. But brain scans tell a different story. Every part of your brain has a function, and over the course of a day, nearly all areas show activity. Some regions are busier than others depending on what you're doing: talking, sleeping, remembering, or moving. Even when you're resting, your brain is alive with electrical signals, maintaining your body and processing thoughts. The myth likely came from early misunderstandings of neuroscience or misinterpretations of old studies. People liked the idea that a hidden 90% could be unlocked. The reality is that your brain is already fully engaged, just not all at the same time. It's more like a symphony, with different sections playing when needed. As you drift to sleep, you can picture those signals quietly firing in the background, a constant, gentle hum of activity, proof that your mind is never really idle. The truth is simpler, but in its own way, more remarkable. Shaving makes hair grow back thicker. Lightning never strikes the same place twice. The saying is used as a metaphor for rare events, but in reality, lightning often strikes the same spot repeatedly. Tall structures like skyscrapers and radio towers can be hit dozens of times a year. Lightning follows the path of least resistance, so if a place is ideal for it once, it's likely ideal again. The Empire State Building, for example, is struck around 20-25 times each year. The myth may have come from people wanting to reassure themselves that danger wouldn't return to the same place, but nature doesn't follow human rules of fairness. Instead, it follows physics, and physics says that lightning prefers what works. When you know this, the world feels less random and more like a pattern. And in a strange way, that pattern can be comforting. As you rest, think of lightning not as chaos, but as repetition, nature's own habit, returning quietly to familiar ground. The tongue has taste zones. School diagrams once showed a tongue map, where each section could taste only certain flavors: sweet at the tip, bitter at the back, salty and sour on the sides. It made sense on paper, but it's not how taste works. Every part of your tongue can detect all basic tastes, though sensitivity may vary slightly. The myth came from a misunderstanding of an old German study, mistranslated into English in the early 1900s. That small error made its way into textbooks and stayed for decades. In truth, your tongue is covered in taste buds capable of sensing sweet, salty, sour, bitter, and umami almost everywhere. Even your cheeks and throat have taste receptors. The old map is just a neat, simple picture, one that stuck because it was easy to teach. But the truth is more evenly spread, just like flavor itself. As you drift off, you might notice how myths often survive because they fit neatly in our minds, even if the world refuses to be that simple. Cracking knuckles causes arthritis. For years, people have warned that cracking your knuckles will lead to arthritis. The sound, they say, is proof of damage. But research shows that the popping noise comes from gas bubbles in the fluid around your joints. When you stretch or pull a finger, the pressure changes, and a bubble forms and collapses, making the sound. Multiple studies, including one famous experiment where a researcher cracked the knuckles on one hand for decades, but not the other. Found no increase in arthritis risk. The habit might make your joints feel looser, and some people find it relaxing. While excessive force could cause soft tissue strain, the everyday popping isn't harming your bones or cartilage. The myth likely lingers because the sound is sharp, almost like something breaking. But knowing it's just harmless gas bubbles can make you see it differently. As you lie in bed, joints still, you might picture those tiny bubbles in peaceful suspension, unpopped and undisturbed, letting you drift a little deeper into calm. The 5-second rule. The idea is simple. If food falls on the floor and you pick it up within 5 seconds, it's safe. It's a comforting thought, turning accidents into quick saves. But bacteria don't carry stopwatches. The moment food touches a contaminated surface, microbes can transfer. Studies have shown that moisture, texture, and surface type matter far more than timing. A slice of dry bread on a clean countertop might stay safe longer than a piece of wet fruit on a dirty floor. The myth persists because the 5-second window feels like a magic loophole, a rule that makes the world just a little easier to navigate. But reality is less forgiving. Food safety depends on conditions, not seconds. Still, the belief has its charm, offering a harmless excuse to rescue a cookie. As you drift towards sleep, you can think about how we invent little rules to make life feel gentler, even if they're not entirely true. Bulls hate the color red. In cartoons and bullfighting, bulls charge at a waving red cape. The assumption is that red enrages them. In truth, bulls are colorblind to red. They react to the movement of the fabric, not the hue. The choice of red in bullfighting is for tradition and spectacle. It hides blood and looks dramatic to the audience. The bull would react the same way to a moving blue or white cloth. This myth survives because the image is vivid and easy to remember. We like the idea that an animal could have such a specific passionate hatred, but the truth is less emotional, more about instinct and motion. As you rest, you can picture a field where a bull grazes calmly, unaffected by color, responding only to the rhythm of life around it. Myths like this remind us how often we see the world through the lens of drama rather than reality. You swallow 8 spiders a year in your sleep. The claim is unsettling, that as you sleep, spiders crawl into your mouth, but it has no basis in fact. Spiders generally avoid humans, sensing our vibrations and breathing as signs of danger. The myth likely began as an example of how easily false facts spread, perhaps in a magazine or early internet post. It works because it's both gross and believable. We've all seen spiders in quiet corners of rooms, but a human mouth is warm, moist, and full of movement, hardly an inviting place for a spider. Knowing this, you can rest easier, unbothered by imaginary nighttime visitors. It's a perfect example of how fear often survives longer than truth. And as you fall asleep, you might find it comforting to think of spiders going about their own business, far away from your pillow. The Great Wall of China is visible from space. Many school lessons have included this claim, painting the wall as a wonder so vast it can be seen from the moon. But astronauts confirm that it's not easily visible to the naked eye from low Earth orbit, and certainly not from the moon. The wall is long but narrow, blending with the natural landscape. Cities, roads, and airports are often more visible because they contrast more sharply with their surroundings. The myth stuck because it sounds like the ultimate testament to human achievement. The truth is no less impressive. The wall stretches over 13,000 miles, winding through mountains and deserts, a monument to centuries of effort. It may not shine from space, but on Earth, it's as real and enduring as the stones beneath your feet. As you close your eyes, imagine walking its quiet stretches under the fading sun, a place where myths and reality meet in the stillness. Humans have only 5 senses. We're taught that we have 5 senses: sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. But scientists recognize many more. There's proprioception, your sense of body position; equilibrioception, your sense of balance; thermoception, your ability to feel temperature; nociception, your sense of pain; and even interoception, your awareness of internal states like hunger or thirst. These senses work quietly in the background, guiding you through every movement and choice. The five-sense model survives because it's neat and easy to teach, but reality is more complex, and in some ways, more beautiful. Our perception of the world is layered, blending signals from many systems at once. As you drift off, think about how your senses are still at work, keeping you balanced in bed, sensing the coolness of the air, and reminding you that the world you experience is richer than you were first told. Bats are blind. The phrase blind as a bat is misleading. Bats are not blind at all. Many species have good eyesight, some even excellent night vision. They rely heavily on echolocation, sending out high-pitched sounds and listening for the echoes, but their eyes still provide valuable information. The myth may come from the fact that they navigate so well in darkness, leading people to assume they don't use vision. In truth, bats use a combination of senses to hunt, avoid obstacles, and interact with their environment. Even in pitch-black caves, their eyes adjust to pick up the faintest traces of light. As you rest, imagine a bat gliding through the night, its senses working in harmony, perfectly adapted for its world. The idea that it is blind dissolves, replaced by a picture of a creature more capable than the saying allows. You can see the Great Wall from the moon. The moon myth is so common that many take it as fact, but it's purely symbolic. The wall is narrow and blends into the landscape. From space, human-made objects like highways and cities are often easier to see. Astronauts report that spotting the wall without aid is difficult even from low Earth orbit. The myth works because it plays into a sense of human achievement that something we built could stand out from such a distance. But the truth doesn't lessen its wonder. On the ground, the wall's scale is overwhelming, stretching across mountains and plains. At night, in quiet moments, you can imagine walking along its stones, hearing only the wind and feeling the weight of centuries. Its greatness is in its presence here, not in how far it can be seen. Sugar causes hyperactivity in children. Birthday parties and holiday gatherings have fueled the idea that sugar makes kids hyperactive, but controlled studies show no consistent link. The excitement of events, the noise and the anticipation play bigger roles in energy levels than the sugar itself. Parents may notice a sugar rush because they expect it, a kind of confirmation bias. The body processes sugar into glucose, a vital fuel for cells, but it doesn't automatically trigger bursts of uncontrollable energy. The myth persists because it's convenient. It gives a simple cause for restless behavior. As you fall asleep, you might think about how often we mistake coincidence for cause, and how sometimes the truth is less dramatic than the story we tell. Hair and nails keep growing after death. The unsettling idea that hair and nails continue to grow after death is a persistent one. In reality, it's an illusion caused by dehydration. As the skin loses moisture, it pulls back slightly, making hair and nails appear longer. Growth requires living cells, and without circulation, that process stops quickly. The myth endures because it's eerie and easy to visualize, playing into our fascination with life after death. But the truth is that the body's changes after death are chemical and physical, not signs of continued growth. As you rest, you might find comfort in knowing that life's endings are quiet, without secret movements in the dark. Touching a baby bird will make its mother reject it. Many believe that if a human touches a baby bird, the scent will make its mother abandon it. In truth, most birds have a poor sense of smell. They rely on sight and sound to recognize their chicks. If you find a baby bird, the best course is usually to leave it alone unless it's in immediate danger. Returning it to its nest won't cause rejection. This myth persists because it's often used as a way to discourage children from disturbing wildlife. As you lie still, imagine a bird returning to its nest, unfazed by scent, focused only on the soft calls of its young. Carrots improve night vision. Carrots are healthy and rich in beta-carotene, which the body uses to make vitamin A, essential for eye health. But eating large amounts won't give you superhuman night vision. This myth was popularized during World War II, when the British Royal Air Force claimed their pilots' excellent night vision was due to eating carrots. In reality, it was a cover for the use of radar technology. The story was believable because vitamin A deficiency can cause poor vision, and carrots were a well-known source. As you rest, picture the quiet fields where carrots grow, and how a simple root vegetable became part of wartime strategy and everyday belief. Goldfish memory is only 3 seconds. Goldfish have been trained to respond to sounds, remember feeding schedules, and navigate mazes. Their memory can last months, not seconds. The 3-second claim has no scientific basis. It likely comes from underestimating small animals. In truth, memory depends on brain structure and needs, not size alone. As you drift off, imagine a goldfish swimming in slow circles, remembering the hand that brings its food. Aware of more than we give it credit for. Coffee stunts growth. The belief that coffee stops you from growing likely comes from old concerns about caffeine and bone health. Modern research shows that moderate coffee consumption has no effect on growth. For children and teens, too much caffeine isn't ideal for sleep and heart rate, but it doesn't shrink anyone. The myth survives because it's a simple way to steer kids away from coffee. As you relax, think of the quiet steam rising from a cup, more comfort than curse. Penguins mate for life. Penguins are often held up as a symbol of lifelong monogamy, but the truth is more nuanced. Many species form strong bonds during a breeding season, but often choose new partners in later years. They may remain faithful for a time, but circumstances and survival needs can lead to change. The myth persists because we like symbols of devotion in nature. As you fall asleep, picture penguins on the ice, choosing each season's path, loyal in the moment, yet free to adapt. Chameleons change color to match any background. Many people imagine chameleons as tiny mood rings of the animal kingdom, shifting instantly to match any surface. In reality, their color changes are influenced more by temperature, light, and emotional state than by perfect camouflage. The colors come from specialized skin cells that reflect light differently. While some blending with the environment can happen, it's not like the magical transformations shown in cartoons. A chameleon may turn brighter when stressed or darker when cold. The myth likely comes from watching them blend into leaves and assuming it's purely for hiding. As you settle deeper into rest, you can picture one resting on a branch, not trying to disappear, but simply wearing the colors of its mood. The comforting idea that you can rescue dropped food if it's picked up quickly ignores how fast bacteria can transfer. Contact time does play a role, but so do moisture and surface type. A dry cracker on a clean table may stay safer longer than a slice of fruit on a sticky floor. But 5 seconds is not a magic number. The rule survives because it's easy to remember and gives permission to bend hygiene just enough. As you drift to sleep, you might think about how we invent neat little rules to make life feel less strict, even if science says otherwise. Vikings wore horned helmets. Art and costume have cemented the image of Vikings wearing helmets with dramatic horns. In truth, no evidence shows this was common. The horned design comes from 19th-century stage productions of operas like Wagner's, meant for theatrical flair. Real Viking helmets were practical, designed for protection in battle. Horns would have been a disadvantage, easy to grab or catch. The myth is powerful because it's visually striking. It makes Vikings look more fearsome. As you rest, you can picture a real Viking ship, the warriors aboard wearing simple, sturdy gear, their strength in their skill, not their horns. The Coriolis effect determines toilet flush direction. It's often said that toilets flush clockwise in one hemisphere and counterclockwise in the other because of the Coriolis effect. While this effect does influence large-scale systems like hurricanes, it's far too weak to dictate the swirl in a small basin. The direction of a flush depends on the toilet's design and water jets. The myth endures because it connects everyday objects to the vast forces of the planet. As you fall asleep, think about how sometimes the grand and the small are linked only in our imagination, not in reality. A penny dropped from a skyscraper could kill someone. The story goes that if you dropped a penny from the top of a tall building, it could hit the ground with deadly force. In reality, air resistance limits its speed. A penny's light weight and flat shape mean it won't reach speeds high enough to be lethal. It could sting or surprise someone, but it wouldn't be fatal. The myth persists because it's dramatic and easy to picture. As you drift off, you can imagine a penny spinning slowly through the air, harmless in its fall. Another reminder that fear often grows in the telling. Einstein failed math as a child. Albert Einstein is often used as proof that even geniuses can struggle in school, with the claim that he failed math. The truth is, he excelled in the subject from a young age. The myth likely arose from confusion over grading systems or from his struggles in non-scientific subjects. The idea survives because it's encouraging. It suggests that early failure doesn't define you. As you rest, think about how even myths can carry a kind of kindness, offering hope, even if the story isn't quite true. Ostriches bury their heads in the sand. Cartoons and clichés depict ostriches hiding from danger by burying their heads in sand. In truth, they lower their heads to the ground to tend eggs or to blend in when resting. From a distance, it can look like the head is buried, but it's not. Ostriches rely on running or kicking to escape predators, not hiding. The myth endures because the image is funny and relatable. The idea of avoiding problems by not looking at them. As you drift towards sleep, you might think of an ostrich calmly tending its nest, head down in care, not fear. Swallowing gum won't leave it in your stomach for years. The body can't break down gum mace, but it moves through the digestive system and is passed like other indigestible substances. The 7 years claim is a harmless warning to discourage swallowing it. The myth lasts because the number is oddly specific, making it seem believable. As you rest, think about how myths often stick because they feel just real enough to remember. Sharks don't get cancer. Seasons are caused by distance from the sun. Many believe summer happens when the Earth is closer to the sun and winter when it's farther. In truth, seasons are caused by the tilt of the Earth's axis, which changes the angle and duration of sunlight. When your hemisphere tilts toward the sun, you get summer. When it tilts away, you get winter. The myth survives because the explanation seems straightforward. Closer means warmer. But as you rest, you might picture the planet slowly tilting through its orbit, a gentle rhythm that shapes the year. Lightning never strikes the same place twice. The phrase is used to describe rare events, but lightning often returns to the same spot. Tall structures like radio towers, skyscrapers, and trees in open fields are struck repeatedly because they provide an easy path for electricity to travel. The Empire State Building, for example, can be struck dozens of times a year. The myth endures because it feels reassuring. It suggests that once danger has passed, it won't return. But nature doesn't follow rules of fairness. Lightning follows physics. As you drift off, you might imagine a quiet storm, flashes finding their familiar paths again and again. Alcohol warms you up. A sip of alcohol can create a warm feeling, but it's an illusion. Alcohol causes blood vessels near the skin to expand, moving warm blood from your core to your extremities. This makes you feel warmer temporarily, but it actually lowers your core temperature. In cold conditions, this can be dangerous. The myth sticks because the sensation is immediate and pleasant. As you rest, think about how warmth and safety are not always the same, and how comfort can sometimes be just a feeling, not a fact. Mount Everest is the tallest mountain in the world. Measured from sea level, Everest is the highest point on Earth. But if you measure from base to peak, Mauna Kea in Hawaii is taller, most of it hidden beneath the ocean. Everest's fame comes from its challenge, not just its height. The myth survives because tallest sounds absolute, yet it depends on how you measure. As you lie still, you might imagine both mountains, one towering into the sky, the other rising from the ocean floor, each great in its own way. Banana plants look like trees, but they are actually giant herbs. Their trunks are layers of tightly packed leaf bases, and each plant produces fruit only once before dying back. The myth comes from their size and appearance. As you rest, picture a field of banana plants, green leaves swaying, not trees but something softer, stranger, and just as alive. The sun is yellow. From Earth, the sun often looks yellow, orange, or red, depending on the atmosphere's scattering of light. But in space without that filter, the sun is white, emitting all visible wavelengths at once. The yellow image survives because it's what we see through our sky. As you drift off, you can imagine floating above the atmosphere, looking at the sun as it truly is, bright, white, and steady. Dogs see only in black and white. Dogs can't see the full spectrum humans do. But they aren't colorblind in the sense of total black and white vision. They can see blues and yellows, but reds and greens appear muted. The myth comes from early studies that underestimated their perception. As you rest, picture the world from a dog's view, not less colorful, just differently painted. Humans evolved from chimps. Humans and chimpanzees share a common ancestor, but one didn't evolve directly from the other. Our evolutionary paths split millions of years ago. The myth persists because it's a simple way to explain similarity, but evolution is a branching tree, not a straight line. As you settle deeper into rest, you might imagine that ancient tree, its branches stretching in many directions, each carrying its own story. Earth's gravity stops at the edge of the atmosphere. Gravity doesn't suddenly vanish in space, it extends infinitely, though its strength decreases with distance. Astronauts in orbit are still under Earth's gravity. They appear weightless because they're in constant freefall around the planet. The myth lingers because weightlessness looks like absence of gravity. As you rest, picture Earth's invisible pull stretching endlessly into space, a silent connection holding everything close. The moon has a dark side. The moon is tidally locked, showing the same face to Earth, but both sides receive sunlight during its orbit. The dark side simply means the far side, unseen from our planet. The myth remains because dark sounds mysterious. As you fall asleep, you might imagine the far side quietly turning through light and shadow, just like the side we know. Touching toads gives you warts. Warts are caused by certain human viruses, not by toads. The bumps on a toad's seam are part of its natural texture, not contagious growths. The myth comes from their rough, uneven skin, which looks like warts. As you rest, picture a toad sitting still near a pond, harmless and unbothered, carrying nothing but the shape nature gave it. Your hair grows faster if you cut it. Many believe trimming hair makes it grow faster or thicker. In reality, hair grows from follicles beneath the skin, unaffected by cutting the ends. Trimming can make hair look healthier by removing split ends, giving the illusion of faster growth. The myth stays alive because the visible result appears immediate. As you settle in, think about how appearances can change our perception of truth, making us believe in cause where there is only coincidence. The North Star is the brightest star in the sky. The North Star, or Polaris, is important for navigation because it stays nearly fixed in the night sky. But it's not the brightest. That title belongs to Sirius. The myth persists because Polaris is famous and easy to find when looking north. As you rest, picture the quiet arc of the stars overhead, Polaris steady and reliable, not because of its brightness, but because of its place. Camels store water in their humps. Camel humps store fat, not water. The fat provides energy during long journeys in harsh climates. Camels manage water loss efficiently, allowing them to go days without drinking, but the water is stored in their bloodstream, not their humps. The myth survives because the hump seems like the perfect container. As you rest, you might imagine a camel crossing the desert, its humps full of energy, not water. Bats always hang upside down. Bats roost upside down because it's safe and allows quick flight, but not all bats hang this way all the time. Some species rest in different positions, and they can crawl or move upright when needed. The myth likely comes from images of bats in caves, always shown in the same pose. As you lie still, picture a bat gently shifting position, perfectly comfortable in its world. The Great Pyramid was built by slaves. Evidence suggests that the Great Pyramid of Giza was built by skilled laborers who were paid and well fed, not by slaves. Workers lived in nearby villages, and archaeological finds show they were respected for their craft. The slave narrative may have been popularized by later historians and media. As you rest, imagine the steady rhythm of ancient tools, the pride in a job done well, and how myths can sometimes overshadow human dignity. Humans pop in space without a suit. The movies often show people exploding instantly in the vacuum of space. In reality, without a suit, you'd lose consciousness in seconds due to lack of oxygen. But your body wouldn't explode. You'd swell slightly from pressure differences, but skin and tissues would hold. The myth persists because it's dramatic and visually shocking. As you drift off, picture the vast quiet of space, more dangerous in silence than in spectacle. Shaving makes facial hair grow darker. Like the myth about shaving making hair thicker, the belief that it grows back darker is also false. The blunt edge from shaving can make hair appear darker until it grows longer and softens. Color is determined by pigment, unaffected by a razor. The myth stays because the effect is visible right after shaving. As you rest, think of how easily our senses can trick us into believing change has happened. You can catch a cold from being cold. Colds are caused by viruses, not by low temperatures. Cold weather may contribute indirectly by keeping people indoors where germs spread more easily. But the chill itself doesn't cause illness. The myth is reinforced by timing. Many colds occur in winter. As you fall asleep, think of the cold air as just air, not a hidden illness, and how our minds connect events, even when they're not truly linked. All deserts are hot. Deserts are defined by dryness, not temperature. The Antarctic and Arctic are technically deserts because they receive very little precipitation. The myth endures because most famous deserts are hot and sandy. As you rest, you might picture a silent, frozen desert, stretching under pale light, a reminder that not all definitions match our first impressions. Humans swallow 8 spiders a year in their sleep. This unsettling myth has no factual basis. Spiders avoid humans, sensing vibrations from breathing and movement. The claim likely started as an example of how easily false information spreads. It survives because it's both gross and strangely believable. As you drift deeper into rest, you can be certain that no spider is waiting for you to sleep. They have their own quiet places to be. Goldfish have a 3-second memory. The claim that goldfish forget everything in 3 seconds is false. Studies show they can remember feeding routines, recognize their owners, and even navigate mazes for weeks or months. The myth probably came from assuming small animals have small capabilities. In truth, their memory works well for their environment. As you rest, imagine a goldfish swimming calmly, recalling yesterday's feeding, aware of far more than the myth allows. You should wait an hour after eating before swimming. Many were told as children that swimming right after eating could cause cramps and drowning. While exercise after eating might feel uncomfortable for some, it's not dangerous for most people. The myth likely started as a cautious warning that became exaggerated over time. As you lie still, you can imagine a summer lake, calm and inviting, and know that the body is capable of more than old fears suggest. The blood is blue inside your body. Veins appear blue under the skin, leading to the belief that blood changes color when exposed to air. In reality, blood is always red, darker when lacking oxygen, brighter when oxygenated. The blue appearance is due to how light penetrates skin and is reflected back. The myth lasts because the visual is convincing. As you rest, you might think about how often our eyes see only part of the truth. Lemmings commit mass suicide. The idea that lemmings willingly jump off cliffs comes from staged nature documentaries in the mid-20th century. In reality, lemming populations naturally rise and fall, and mass movements can cause accidental deaths, but there's no intentional group suicide. The myth remains because it's dramatic and symbolic. As you drift off, picture a lemming in its snowy home simply living, not following some tragic instinct. Sugar makes kids hyperactive. Studies have shown no consistent link between sugar and hyperactivity. The excitement at parties or holidays often comes from the event itself, not the sweets. Parents may notice sugar rushes because they expect to. The myth persists because it feels like a simple explanation. As you rest, think of sweetness as just taste, not an automatic burst of chaos. The tongue has separate taste zones. Old diagrams show different sections of the tongue dedicated to specific tastes. In reality, all taste buds can detect all 5 basic tastes, though sensitivity may vary slightly. The myth began from a misinterpretation of early studies. As you lie still, imagine flavor as a wave washing across the tongue, not bound by neat borders. Lightning only strikes in storms. While storms are the most common cause, lightning can strike miles away from the rain clouds, a phenomenon called bolts from the blue. These strikes can happen under clear skies, The myth remains because most lightning is seen with storms. As you rest, you might picture the sky still and bright, yet carrying hidden energy. Owls can turn their heads all the way around. Owls can rotate their heads about 270 degrees, not a full 360. They have extra neck vertebrae, allowing this range without harming blood flow. The myth survives because 270 degrees looks like a full turn. As you rest, you might imagine an owl in a quiet forest turning smoothly, almost but not quite all the way. Humans only use 10% of their brain. Brain scans show activity across nearly all areas over the course of a day. Some parts are more active depending on the task, but the idea of a dormant 90% is false. The myth may have come from early misunderstandings of neuroscience. As you drift off, you might picture your brain as a city, lights flicking on in different districts as needed, never truly idle. Drinking 8 glasses of water a day is mandatory. The 8 glasses rule is more guideline than law. Water needs vary by person, diet, and climate. Foods, other drinks, and even metabolic processes provide hydration. The myth persists because it's simple and easy to remember. As you rest, think about how the body quietly manages its needs, sending thirst as the truest guide. The Great Wall of China is visible from space. This popular claim has been repeated in classrooms for decades, but it's not true in the way people think. The Great Wall is long, but it's narrow and blends with its surroundings. Astronauts say it's difficult to see with the naked eye from low orbit and impossible from the moon. Other features, like cities and airports, are far more visible due to their contrast. The myth lives on because it's a romantic idea, something humans built being so vast it stands out from the heavens. As you rest, imagine walking a quiet section of the wall at dusk, appreciating it for what it truly is, not for where it can be seen from. Cracking your knuckles causes arthritis. The familiar pop of cracking knuckles can make bystanders wince, and over time, warnings about arthritis have been passed down. But the sound comes from gas bubbles in joint fluid collapsing, not from damaging bones or cartilage. Research, including a decades-long experiment by one doctor on his own hands, shows no connection to arthritis. The myth survives because the sound feels like something breaking. As you relax, you can think of those tiny bubbles drifting silently in your joints, harmless until you decide to move them. Milk builds strong bones for everyone. Milk is rich in calcium and vitamin D, both important for bone health, but drinking milk is not the only way or always the best way to strengthen bones. Genetics, exercise, and overall diet play large roles. Some populations thrive with little dairy intake, getting calcium from greens, beans, and fish. The myth comes from decades of advertising linking milk to universal bone strength. As you lie still, imagine a calm field where cows graze, and remember that health has many paths. Bulls hate the color red. In bullfighting, the matador waves a red cape, and the bull charges. It's easy to believe the color triggers anger. In reality, bulls are colorblind to red. They respond to motion, not hue. The red cape is tradition, chosen for spectacle and to hide bloodstains. The myth remains because it's vivid and theatrical. As you drift towards sleep, picture a bull grazing peacefully, unaffected by the colors around it, moved only by movement and sound. Sushi always means raw fish. Many think sushi refers specifically to raw fish, but sushi actually means vingeda rice. It can be served with raw fish, cooked seafood, vegetables, or egg. The raw fish dishes are sashimi, which doesn't include rice at all. The myth likely comes from sushi's global image as exotic raw seafood. As you rest, you might picture a simple sushi roll, rice and vegetables wrapped neatly, no raw fish in sight. Sharks will attack if they smell a drop of blood. Sharks have a keen sense of smell, but the one-drop claim is an exaggeration. They can detect small amounts over time, but water currents, distance, and other scents matter. The myth survives because it's thrilling and makes sharks seem like perfect hunters. As you rest, think of the shark as a cautious predator, not an instant killer. Mount Everest is the closest point to space. Everest is the tallest above sea level, but because Earth bulges at the equator, Mount Chimborazo in Ecuador is actually the point closest to space. The myth holds because we measure height from sea level, not from Earth's center. As you lie still, picture both mountains under a starry sky, each touching the heavens in their own way. Black holes suck everything like vacuums. Black holes have intense gravity, but they don't indiscriminately suck in everything nearby. If our sun were replaced by a black hole of equal mass, Earth's orbit would remain the same. The myth comes from dramatic depictions in films. As you rest, you might imagine a black hole as silent and patient, affecting only what strays too close. The moon is larger on the horizon. When the moon rises or sets, it appears bigger, but it's an illusion. The moon's size in the sky doesn't change. Our brains compare it to objects on the horizon, making it seem larger. The myth lasts because the effect feels so real. As you drift off, think about how perception shapes reality. Even in the quiet night sky, humans are the only tool users. For years, tool use was thought to be uniquely human. Now we know crows, chimpanzees, dolphins, and even sea otters use tools. The myth survived because we liked the idea of it setting us apart. As you rest, picture a crow bending a twig to reach food, proof that intelligence is shared more widely than we once believed. The tongue is the strongest muscle in the body. The tongue is incredibly agile and vital for speech and eating, but it's not the strongest muscle overall. Strength depends on how you define it. By absolute force, muscles like the gluteus maximus or jaw muscles are stronger. The myth lasts because the tongue works constantly and with great precision, which feels like strength. As you rest, picture your tongue at ease, not in competition, simply doing the quiet work it's meant for. Glass is a slow-moving liquid. Some believe glass flows over centuries because old windows appear thicker at the bottom. In reality, glass is a solid. The uneven thickness is due to old manufacturing methods, not gradual movement. The myth persists because it's poetic to think of glass flowing like frozen water. As you drift off, imagine light passing through a still, solid pane unchanged by time except in the way we frame it. A mother bird will reject a chick touched by humans. Birds rarely abandon chicks due to human scent. Most have a poor sense of smell. They may reject young if disturbed repeatedly, but a brief touch won't cause rejection. The myth comes from well-meaning advice to protect wildlife. As you rest, imagine a nest swaying gently, the mother returning without hesitation. Napoleon was extremely short. Napoleon's height was average for his time, about 5'6" to 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 5'6" diamonds. Confusion came from differences between French and British measurement systems, and British propaganda painting him as smaller. The myth survives because it fits the idea of Napoleon complex. As you lie still, think about how easy it is for history to be shaped by rivals. Humans have only 5 senses. In addition to sight, hearing, taste, touch, and smell, humans also sense balance, body position, temperature, pain, and internal states. The myth survives because 5 is easy to teach and remember. As you rest, notice your own senses quietly keeping track of the world even now. Twinkies last forever. Twinkies have a long shelf life for baked goods, but it's only weeks, not years. The myth comes from jokes and exaggerations about their preservatives. As you relax, think about how even the most artificial-seeming things still have limits. The brain stops working when you sleep. Sleep is a period of intense brain activity, processing memories, regulating hormones, and repairing the body. The myth may come from equating stillness with inactivity. As you drift towards sleep, know that your brain will keep working, quietly tending to you. The sun is the center of the universe. The sun is the center of our solar system, not the entire universe. The myth endures from early models of the cosmos. As you rest, imagine our sun just one star among billions, each with its own story. You can see the Great Wall from the moon. Astronauts confirm this isn't true. The wall is narrow and blends with the terrain. The myth survives because it's a proud idea. As you relax, think of the wall's true greatness in its history, not its visibility from space. Eating carrots gives you night vision. Carrots support eye health but won't give superhuman sight. This myth was spread in WBD to hide radar technology. As you rest, picture a carrot field under soft moonlight and how stories can be used to shape what people believe. Dropping a penny from a skyscraper is deadly. The image is vivid. A small coin falling from a great height, turning into a lethal projectile. In reality, air resistance quickly slows a penny's fall to a terminal velocity of around 25 miles per hour. That's fast enough to sting if it hits skin, but not enough to penetrate it or cause serious harm. A penny is light and flat, and it tends to flutter unpredictably in the air rather than slicing straight down. The myth survives because it sounds logical. Speed plus height equals danger, and because it's been repeated in movies, television, and playground dares. In truth, for an object to be deadly when dropped from such a height, it would need to be much heavier, sharper, or more aerodynamic. Still, this myth has had an unexpected effect. It has made people think twice about tossing anything off tall buildings, which is probably for the best. As you lie in bed, you might picture a penny drifting lazily downward, twisting and tumbling through the air, more harmless than the stories ever claimed. It's a small reminder that not all dangers we imagine are as real as they seem, and that sometimes a myth can make the world a little safer even if it isn't true. Lightning never strikes the same place twice. The saying is often used as a metaphor for rare events, but in nature it's completely false. Lightning frequently strikes the same location, especially tall or isolated structures like skyscrapers, mountains, or even lone trees in a field. The Empire State Building in New York is struck by lightning an average of 20 to 25 times each year. Lightning seeks the fastest path to the ground, and if that path remains the same, so does the strike location. The myth likely became popular because it gives comfort. Once something bad has happened, it won't happen again. But nature doesn't follow the rules of fairness, it follows physics. In fact, lightning's return to the same point can be predicted if the right conditions are present. As you rest tonight, imagine a summer storm over a darkened city, bolts finding their familiar pathways down through the clouds again and again. It's both humbling and strangely calming to know that the universe works by rules that are steady, even when they're not in our favor. The myth, while poetic, is just another way we've tried to make unpredictable nature fit into human stories. Humans have only 5 senses. It's often taught in school that humans have just sight, hearing, touch, taste, and smell. But the truth is far richer. We also have proprioception, which is the awareness of our body's position. Equilibrioception, which is our sense of balance. Thermoception, the ability to detect temperature. Nociception, the perception of pain. And interoception, which lets us sense internal states like hunger and thirst. Depending on how scientists define sense, we could have more than a dozen. The myth of 5 senses likely stuck because it's simple to teach and has roots in Aristotle's writings. Yet even as we rest at night, our bodies are constantly processing these lesser-known senses, helping us navigate the world without needing to think about it. Imagine closing your eyes and still knowing where your hands are, or feeling the tilt of your head without looking in a mirror. Those are senses beyond the classic 5. The truth is that our awareness of the world is a network of overlapping systems, each one quietly at work. As you drift into sleep, think of your senses like threads woven into a fabric. You may only notice the boldest colors, sight and sound, but the rest are there too, adding depth, texture, and stability to your life. The idea that we have just 5 is a poetic oversimplification, but the reality is far more fascinating. Bulls hate the color red. In bullfighting, the matador waves a red cape, called a muleta, and the bull charges. It's easy to believe that the color red triggers rage. But bulls, like most cattle, are essentially colorblind to red and green. They see shades of blue and yellow more distinctly, but red appears as a muted gray-brown. The real trigger for a bull's charge is the movement of the cape, not its color. The red hue was chosen historically for dramatic effect, and because it helped hide any blood during the fight. The myth has endured because it's visually powerful. The combination of a fierce animal and a bright, striking fabric makes for a memorable image. In truth, if you stood still holding a red cloth, the bull would likely ignore you. But if you waved any color of fabric with enough motion, it would respond. This misunderstanding is a perfect example of how tradition and spectacle can create facts that aren't rooted in science. As you relax, you might picture a bull in a peaceful pasture, grazing without a care for colors, reacting only to the wind moving through the grass. The reality is calmer than the legend, and somehow that makes it more beautiful. Goldfish have a 3-second memory. For years, people have joked that goldfish are constantly surprised because they forget everything after 3 seconds. But research has shown that goldfish can remember feeding routines, recognize their owners, and even learn to navigate small mazes for weeks or months. They are capable of associating sounds with food and can be trained to respond to specific cues. The myth likely began as a way to dismiss the mental abilities of small animals, perhaps because we expect intelligence to correlate with size. In truth, goldfish memory serves their needs perfectly. In the wild, remembering food sources and safe locations is vital. The belief in their forgetfulness may have persisted simply because it's amusing, a light-hearted image that paints them as endlessly rediscovering their environment. But the reality is that their memory is long enough to form habits, develop preferences, and adapt to changes. As you rest, imagine a goldfish in a quiet aquarium, swimming with gentle purpose, recalling yesterday's meal, the safe corner it prefers to rest in, and the sound of its owner's footsteps approaching. Far from being a mindless loop, its world is familiar and patterned, proof that even the smallest creatures live with more awareness than myths allow. The moon has a permanent dark side. People often speak of the moon's dark side, as if one half is in eternal shadow. In reality, the moon is tidally locked, meaning it shows the same face to Earth, but both sides receive sunlight over the course of its orbit. The far side, the one we never see from Earth, experiences day and night, just like the near side. The term dark side became popular because it sounds mysterious, but astronomers prefer far side. This side is more rugged and heavily cratered, likely because it's shielded less from asteroid impacts. We didn't see detailed images of it until spacecraft orbited the moon in the 20th century. The myth persists because our everyday view reinforces it. We only ever see the same face. But if you were standing on the far side, you'd watch the sun rise and set over a horizon no human eyes have ever witnessed in person. As you drift towards sleep, imagine that hidden landscape bathed in soft lunar light, not in darkness but in a quiet silver day, waiting for its turn to face the stars. Cracking your knuckles causes arthritis. The sharp sound of knuckle cracking can make others wince, leading to repeated warnings that it will cause arthritis later in life. However, studies, including a famous one conducted by a doctor who cracked the knuckles of one hand daily for decades, have found no link between knuckle cracking and arthritis. The sound comes from gas bubbles in the synovial fluid of the joints collapsing or forming as the joint is stretched, not from bones grinding or damage being done. While excessive cracking can cause mild swelling or reduced grip strength in some cases, it doesn't harm cartilage in the way arthritis does. The myth probably persists because the noise itself is unsettling, making people assume it's destructive. It's also an easy cautionary tale to pass along to children. As you rest, picture those tiny bubbles forming and releasing in your joints, harmless little pockets of air moving in the quiet space between bones. The truth is far less alarming than the story, and maybe even a little soothing, just another reminder that sound doesn't always mean damage. Vikings wore horned helmets. The iconic image of Viking warriors wearing helmets with long, curved horns is more costume design than historical fact. Archaeological evidence shows that Viking helmets were simple, practical, and hornless, designed for protection in battle rather than decoration. The horned look became popular in the 19th century, largely thanks to operatic productions like Richard Wagner's Der Ring des Nibelungen, where costumers added horns for dramatic effect. The image stuck because it was striking and easy to recognize, and soon became part of popular culture. Real Viking gear was built for endurance, not intimidation through flair. Horns would have been a disadvantage in combat, catching on weapons or being grabbed by opponents. As you lie in bed, imagine a Viking ship cutting through icy waters, its crew wearing plain metal helmets. fur-lined cloaks, and determined expressions, strength shown through skill and resilience, not through theatrical decoration. Myths like these remind us that history often gets filtered through art, and art sometimes chooses spectacle over truth. Mount Everest is the closest point to space. Everest is the tallest mountain above sea level, but it's not the closest point to space. That height belongs to Mount Chimborazo in Ecuador. Because Earth bulges slightly at the equator due to its rotation, Chimborazo's summit sits farther from the planet's center than Everest, even though it's over 8,000 feet shorter in elevation. This means that if you stood on Chimborazo's peak, you'd be physically closer to the stars than someone on Everest. The myth persists because our measurements are based on height above sea level, not distance from Earth's core. As you rest, picture both mountains, one a snow-covered giant in the Himalayas, the other a volcanic peak rising from tropical highlands, each remarkable in its own way, yet proof that the way we measure things shapes the stories we tell about them. The Great Wall of China is visible from space. It's a proud claim that something built by human hands can be seen from space without aid, but in truth the Great Wall is difficult to spot even from low Earth orbit. It's long, but it's narrow and made from materials that blend with the surrounding landscape. Astronauts say that cities, airports, and roads are far more visible because they contrast more sharply with their environments. The myth may have been born from a mix of national pride and early misreports. This doesn't make the wall any less impressive. It remains a massive feat of engineering, stretching over 13,000 miles. As you drift off, picture walking a quiet section of the wall at dawn, mist curling along the ridges, knowing that its greatness lies not in being seen from the stars, but in the centuries of effort, history, and lives that built it. Sugar causes hyperactivity in children. The idea that sugar makes children bounce off the walls is deeply rooted in popular belief, but research has repeatedly failed to find a consistent link. Controlled studies where parents didn't know whether their children had consumed sugar or a placebo often showed no difference in behavior. The perception of a sugar rush may come from the contexts where sugar is consumed. Birthday parties, holidays, or special events where excitement levels are already high. Parents may also notice normal bursts of energy and attribute them to sweets because it fits the story they expect. While excessive sugar has its drawbacks, contributing to dental issues, obesity, and other health concerns, hyperactivity isn't one of them. Still, the myth persists because it's a simple, easy-to-grasp explanation for lively behavior. As you rest, imagine a child eating a piece of cake, smiling because of the celebration, the laughter, and the attention, not because of an invisible chemical jolt. The truth is gentler. Joy often comes from the moment, not just the food. Lightning never strikes the same place twice. This phrase is often used metaphorically, to mean rare events won't repeat. But in reality, lightning frequently strikes the same place multiple times. Tall buildings, communication towers, and mountain peaks are prime targets during storms because they provide the shortest path for the electrical discharge. The Empire State Building, for example, is struck around 20 times per year. The myth likely endured because it offered comfort. If something bad happened once, it was less likely to happen again. But nature follows physics, not fairness. Lightning will return to its preferred spots as often as conditions allow. As you lie in bed, imagine a summer storm rolling in, clouds churning above a lone peak, and a brilliant bolt racing down the same familiar path it's taken many times before. The world has its patterns, even in chaos. Sharks will attack if they smell a single drop of blood. Sharks do have an excellent sense of smell, but the one-drop claim is exaggerated. In ideal conditions, some species can detect blood concentrations as low as 1 part per million, but this depends on water currents, distance, and other scents in the water. They don't go into an instant feeding frenzy from a tiny trace. Instead, they investigate potential food sources cautiously. The myth thrives because it paints sharks as relentless hunters, adding to their fearsome image. In truth, many shark species are shy, avoiding humans altogether unless provoked or confused. As you rest, picture a shark gliding through calm waters, uninterested in small disturbances, moving with quiet precision. The reality is far more measured than the movies show. Chameleons change color to camouflage. While chameleons can change color, it's not primarily for hiding. They shift shades to communicate mood, regulate body temperature, and signal to other chameleons. Camouflage is sometimes a side effect, but it's not the main purpose. The myth likely became popular because the idea of an animal blending perfectly into its surroundings is fascinating and easy to visualize. In reality, a chameleon's skin contains specialized cells called chromatophores that expand or contract to produce different colors. As you relax, imagine a chameleon basking in the sun, its colors shifting slowly from cool greens to warm golds, a living mood ring in the branches. You only use 10% of your brain. Brain scans show activity across nearly all areas of the brain over the course of a day. While some areas are more active than others depending on the task, there's no vast reservoir of unused potential sitting idle. The myth may have started from misinterpretations of early neurological research or as a motivational saying. It persists because it's hopeful, suggesting hidden abilities waiting to be unlocked. As you drift off, think of your brain as a city at night, lights flickering on and off in different districts as needs change, but always alive, always active. Carrots give you night vision. Carrots contain beta-carotene, which supports healthy eyesight, but they don't give you the ability to see in the dark. This myth became famous during World War II when the British military encouraged it to explain their pilots' success, a cover story to hide the use of radar technology. While eating carrots can help prevent certain vision problems from vitamin A deficiency, they won't grant superhuman vision. As you rest, picture a carrot field under soft moonlight, rows of orange roots hidden beneath the soil, quietly nourishing the eyes but not turning the night into day. Vikings wore horned helmets. The fearsome horned helmets of popular imagination are a 19th century invention. Real Rivik helmets were practical and plain, made for protection in battle. The horned version appeared in theatrical productions for dramatic flair, especially in operas like Wagner's. Archaeology has found no evidence that Viking warriors wore them in combat. The myth endures because the image is striking and instantly recognizable. As you lie in bed, picture a Viking longship cutting through icy seas, the crew in simple, sturdy helmets, strength coming from their skill and endurance rather than ornament. Owls can turn their heads all the way around. Owls have remarkable neck flexibility, able to rotate their heads about 270 degrees in either direction, but not a full 360. They achieve this with extra neck vertebrae and specialized blood vessels that keep circulation flowing even when twisted. The myth survives because 270 degrees looks like a complete spin to the casual observer. As you rest, imagine an owl perched silently in the moonlight, turning its head smoothly to watch the world around it, precise and composed. Penguins mate for life. While some penguin species form long-term bonds, many do not stay together for life. Partnerships often last only for a breeding season, and the next year they may choose different mates. The myth persists because it's charming to imagine penguins as lifelong romantics. In truth, their loyalty is often to the nesting site rather than the partner. As you drift towards sleep, imagine a colony of penguins calling to one another across the snow, each following instincts shaped by survival more than sentiment. You swallow 8 spiders a year in your sleep. This unsettling claim has no scientific basis. Spiders generally avoid humans, sensing vibrations from breathing and movement as signs of danger. The myth may have begun as an example of how easily misinformation spreads. It survives because it's both gross and plausible sounding. We've all seen spiders in quiet corners, but the truth is that your mouth is warm, moist, and constantly moving, making it an unlikely place for a spider to wander. As you rest for the night, know that spiders have no interest in joining you under the covers. They have their own quiet corners to inhabit, far from your dreams.